Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Education, Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Smith? Here. Ms. Weems?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Dr. Blau?
I'm here.
I am here, so we do have a quorum, and we have 2 members absent.
Okay, thank you. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, I keep forgetting they moved the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We begin our meeting this evening with some wonderful recognitions. Dr. Delgado, would you like to introduce?
Absolutely, and we are very, very excited to recognize one of the incredible programs that we have, which is our automotive program, and we have with us our wonderful teacher, Mr. Sean Weisdorf. You want to come on up, and you have some students with you.
Good afternoon, or is it evening now? I don't know, I haven't got home yet. Thanks for inviting us. Today we've got a presentation for you from 3 of my students that are competing this year in Skills USA. They've qualified for state competition, which is April 12th. And part of their presentation is empowering women in career and technical education, specifically automotive, and showing how this career path can potentially lead to no limits in their futures. And I'll turn it over to them.
Hey guys, so my name is Judy, this is Tiffany, and this is Ashna.
And out of all of the girls in auto, or out of all of the classes in auto this year, we're the only 3 girls enrolled.
While the school year is coming to a close and we've learned a lot in auto, we're proposing a girls-only auto class.
By a certain age, everyone decides they want a car, whether to get easier transportation or learn more about how to fix it. But very few people, when they get their car, know how to take the basic care of it. I looked up some statistics, and they showed that out of people that live in homes, have their places, have like families, stuff like that, like 91.7% of people have cars, but only about 34.9% know how to basics on how to fix their cars. If you were going for a drive and your car broke down, your fuel was bad and needed to be replaced, you needed to fix your tire, your battery died. If you don't know the basics, what are you going to do? Call somebody to get towed and then drop thousands of dollars to get it fixed? With automotive, you don't have to do that. You learn the basics of how to take care of your car, how to lift your car, how to obviously do all the basics you need for your car. In auto, you learn about cars and getting good career opportunities from them and how they could benefit you in many different ways. Throughout what me and the other girls here tonight have experienced in our class this year, we've decided that we want to share with the other young women in our school the benefits that we've received from auto.
Outside of the classroom, though, young women can gain more personal and professional confidence in the field. Through auto, students can earn certifications. So, for example, in year 1, we earn the SP2 and NC3 certifications. This lets us work in our school shop, where we work with lifts, we work with tires, and we change oil. In years 2 and years 3, we get ASE certs, so those are actual professional certs. That lets students work in actual shops. But the hands-on and critical thinking skills that you learn in a shop don't just apply to the shop. They can be used in any job in the field. For example, Tiffany is planning to be an auto technician, so she'll use these exact skills every single day. However, I want to be a mechanical engineer, but these skills are vital in my deeper understanding of engineering and mechanics. I've seen it in school myself. where topics like torque, electricity, kinetic and potential energy, that's all covered in auto, and that's first thing in the morning. And then my last class of the day is physics, and I suddenly understand things a lot better. Sorry. But by providing young women with this knowledge, they'll be able to apply to any field that they want to go into eventually, guaranteeing them some confidence in themselves and their abilities.
Not to mention, when young women are exposed to these new territories or learning, they discover and open up possibilities for other girls to voice their opinions and join classes and careers that no one would think a woman can do. To so many stereotypes, women are clean, they don't work, they don't do like messy stuff, they just look pretty and do their makeup. While women can do all those, but we can also do other things like automotive classes. We can gain many technical skills from them, and we can get our hands a little dirty. These auto career skills open up a world of opportunities and very few limits to what they can achieve in what used to be a male-dominated field. Once the women put in effort in auto, they open up unthinkable possibilities for themselves and for their futures. I reached out to a few female mechanics around us, and they support the idea, and they think the idea is actually pretty nice. We got in their opinions, and for so long, women have wanted to take auto and have been scared that they're not going to fit in really. But now, if we do an all-girls class, we kind of remove the limits and we set up these girls for success.
By implementing this program, we set up young women and girls for success by providing valuable skills that can lead to amazing career opportunities. Being that I'm a senior, it's my last year at North, but if there were the option sooner, I would have taken an all-girls auto class immediately.
We have been working hard with Mr. Reisdorf to look at how an all-girls class would fit in his schedule, and we think we have found an amazing way we can put that in. We want women to feel safe and equal in an environment that would otherwise be considered scary and intimidating.
Automotive is an amazing class and an even better career path, but if you don't want to do something automotive related, just taking the class can build so much experience and skill for when you decide you go out into the real world and you get your true career.
We thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope you're interested in this program as much as we are and see the long-lasting impact and benefits it will have on young women and girls in our district and in the field.
Don't go anywhere. We have questions and comments. Ms. Smith?
Well, you kind of threw me under the car. And you said that you want people to do nails and makeup. That's me. So do you guys get credit for working on cars? You know, so like say, for example, you know, I'm asking for a friend. Do you do coolant and put coolant in cars and change oil, and then do you get credit for that if someone brings their car in?
Yeah, we actually just started learning how to do oil changes. We're just getting started on that, but before that, we learned how to bust tires and change tires, so we do get credit for it.
And if someone brings a car in, wink, wink, do we pay for that service?
So this is my 5th year now at North, and it's been a building process every year. I've got it now to set up where my advanced class is a legitimate live shop, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if you need vehicle service and you work for the district or you go to school in the district or parent or guardian of a student in the district, you email us at NFHS Auto Repair at FPSK12.net. And then one of my student service advisors will respond to that email asking what kind of services you need, scheduling service, ordering parts. You'll pay over the phone with a credit card with our parts supplier, and then we'll schedule service accordingly. There's very few jobs we can't do. Some basically require really specialized tools that we don't have. I'll give you an example. We had an administrator that drives a pretty nice car and needed some brake service done. And when we researched it, it basically came down to we were probably going to need the factory scan tool to reset her computers after the brake job was done. But with a little negotiations on my part from my advisory board, we were able to get it done for her. So again, we can pretty much do anything. Again, there's no labor cost for you. The advanced students, that's why they're there to learn. And that's my goal is I can set things up in the shop for them to do, but it's the real world situations that make the difference. For example, today, advanced students are doing an oil change, something my first year students do. The difference being this oil change, the oil filter was welded onto place. And so they spent an hour trying to get it off, and we still didn't get it off before I left, which is why I was kind of late, because I had to try to work with them. It's like I got to go, run home, get the dog outside, get changed, and come back there, and then we'll have to deal with it tomorrow. So those unfortunate situations are part of auto, and that's, again, where the critical thinking skills come in. Service says, take off the oil filter. Okay, what happens if it doesn't come off? What do you do? There's no book for that. And they'll ask me all the time, what do we do? And I was like, I don't know, what do you do? And I make them figure it out. I'll give you an example. I won't call anybody out. They were like, but I just had my nails done.
Oh,
Well, you're gonna have to figure out, I can't explain that to you because my nails aren't done. I don't know how to hold this so my nails don't get messed up. You gotta figure that out. And they struggle and they get frustrated, but they learn and they're better people for it. So NFHS auto repair at FPS.
and that's all year or just when school is through school year?
Just the school year, yes.
I appreciate you girls, well, young ladies, and for all you do. And you might see me pulling. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Walker. Oh,
Congratulations. I love your enthusiasm, I love your boldness, and I love the point that you made about how even if you don't want to go into automotive, the skills, things that you learn are transferable. That physics piece was incredible. You guys need to be spokespersons for career technical education in general across the board. Keep doing wonderful things. So this is absolutely fabulous. And the father of 2 daughters, yes, please learn how to do those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Ms. Weems?
A few things. First, I am so pleased to hear this. I've been to the North Farmington classroom. I absolutely love it. I've been where students were actually working on cars, including like sparks and fire, moving around. That was pretty neat. I love the program. I'm so glad to see young women in it. I'm really happy to see you come up and present to us and to encourage more participation by females. Really interested to understand what inspired you. I am not a car person at all, but I'm married to a car person. My husband has built 3 cars. When I say built, he buys the shell of a car with nothing under the hood and built it up. And so very interested in doing that. And I have 3 girls, very much like you, who are not allowed to drive unless they know how to change a tire and change their own oil and all that sort of stuff. So they get that from their dad. What inspired you to take a shop class? Was it you like to work on your with your hands? Is it because you appreciate cars? Like what was it about it that made you want to take a shop class?
So I'll answer first. I am the daughter of an engineer myself. So he is very much, has pushed me for most of my life to be like, I should work with your hands. And, you know, at times I'd be like, this isn't cute. This isn't what I want to do, you know what I mean? But, you know, slowly I got into that. Actually, my first year at North, it was online, but he pushed me to take the engineering design class, another CTE class, and I got to learn CAD skills through that. And now I'm in the 4th year engineering class, and it's my senior year. And even in that, that's something where I've discovered I love to work with my hands. It's something so interesting. Design is so interesting to me. And so with auto, I had a spot open, and I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. And my counselor was like, okay, there's zoology, there's this, there's that. Oh, there's auto. You want to be an engineer, right? I was like, yeah, but like, who's taking auto? But then he was like, just try it out, see how it is. And I'm always one for trying new things. So I went in, and the first thing they know, We tried to disassemble a small engine, a small lawnmower engine. That was pretty rough, but it was interesting. And then we had to rebuild it, which was even more tough. But we learned a lot through that. And so from that experience, we get to apply all of that in the shop. And I get to brag to people and say, oh yeah, I work with cars, I've worked with engines, So that's my piece, but.
In total honesty, when I first put my schedule together, I wasn't going to take auto. I had no intentions of getting my hands dirty. I had full intention on doing choir because for my past 3 years of middle school, I had done choir. But I noticed choir was full, and a lot of the other classes I'd been looking at just didn't seem as interesting as I read curriculums. So I decided, why not step out my comfort zone, give auto a shot. I never thought that today I would be intending to do my full 4 years in auto, pursue a career. I've been looking at trade schools to go to for automotive. I never thought it would be something that I would look at and say, I love this. I'm a pretty girl. I like my makeup done. I like my nails done. When Mr. R told the story about the I don't want to ruin my nails, that was me. I'll admit that, I had pretty nails. They're not here anymore, they fell off.
Same too. I had to cut mine off.
But I had no intentions on learning how to take a tire off. I had no intentions on learning how to switch my dead battery, no intentions on learning how to change my oil. But taking auto with Mr. Reisdorf, it's opened up a whole new world for me. It's taught me so much about what I want to do with my future, and it's put me in a spot where I can look ahead and say, that's it. I know what I want to do.
Okay, so for me, it was 8th grade year when we toured the school. I kind of just walked into the class, and I wasn't really expecting much. I was like, it's just gonna be another tour, it's nothing much. But as soon as I walked in, I was pretty fascinated, and it was just a lot of new things I've never thought about trying before. And I kind of just decided, oh, I should take it 1 year and see where that gets me. And I didn't know I'd actually fall in love with it and want to do it for the rest of my 4 years,
That is just totally the power of CTE. I absolutely love it. And just one follow-up question, because I toured as well, and I noticed that a lot of the cars that are there, and I'm actually going to start bringing mine in. I appreciated that little fun fact. I appreciate that. But I noticed that it's mostly ICE vehicles. And is there a plan to move to understanding more of the electric vehicles? I can imagine, I know that we're going to be in transition for several years, but what's the plan there?
There's been a great bit of conversation on that. There was one point where I brought it up to, don't quote me, is it Barth? There was an opportunity where we had DT funds available to do charging stations. My second year, I bought a hybrid vehicle, plug-in hybrid vehicle, just for show and tell purposes. I've been asking my advisory board for 5 years, as well as 15 years in every school I've been at, to bring in hybrid vehicles. I've texted Elon, he doesn't respond, about giving me a Tesla. But yes, that is. I do have some simulated electric vehicle stuff in my shop. I also have online curriculum for that as well. The big challenge, honestly, is I only get the first year students, second year students for an hour a day. For 55 minutes, and then the advanced students for 2 hours a day. There's so much to cover on that. The fundamentals of righty-tighty, lefty-loosey is key. And once we get through that, when we get to the advanced class, then I sprinkle in the electric and hybrid stuff in there. I don't think hybrids are going to go away anytime soon. I'm a big proponent for plug-in hybrids. I get 75 miles per gallon on an average, and that's because Monday through Friday I'm in full electric mode. And then on the weekends when I'm running errands, I have to turn on the gasoline. So I think the greatest thing since sliced bread. But you're right. I mean, everything I've got currently is internal combustion engine. And that is still a majority of our business. It's gradually increasing in electric. But again, from perspective of career paths, it's that entry-level technician position that we're training for. And that's where they're going to be spending most of their time. In the summertime, I teach for a manufacturer. They just, matter of fact, called me a couple nights ago asking me if I could work in April because they need the hybrid safety training across America. I travel across the entire country teaching. And I was like, well, April, I can't. So the dealers are in a crunch right now because they need technicians that can do that, but they've got so many technicians at that entry-level stage that don't have that advanced training because, in full honesty, I don't want them touching, a 400, 800-volt vehicle until they've had proper training, and that takes time.
Thank you.
Ms. Hyman?
Yeah, take your business classes too. Both of my brothers had their own automotive shops, and they grew up, they didn't have the benefit of taking auto in school, but I don't know, my younger brother, who does custom work and everything, and he's like, how did you learn how to do this? And he started with model cars. You were saying that you want an all-girls automotive class, and so, mother of 4 daughters, girls rule. That's true, but are there not enough seats in the regular auto class, or what is the problem taking it with the boys?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we do have enough seats, but the thing is, most girls, they're kind of intimidated. They're gonna think that it's like a mainly like male-dominated class, and like they're not gonna really fit in. They're gonna get made fun of or whatever. So we feel like it'd be like more comfortable for them to be like in an environment with like all girls.
Yes.
Yeah, what does the school say about that? I mean,
Well,
can
if he's
it fit
gonna-
in the schedule?
So a couple things on that. They did do a school survey. It wasn't a great survey. We didn't have, right. So we got a 50% of the female population, and a lot of the feedback we got was that, like, we don't want to take auto because they think it's going to be all boys, and they're uncomfortable in that situation. But the other part of this is, and this is where their project comes into the Skills USA thing, with Perkins 5 is adamant about increasing the non-traditional population. And I've been talking to my administration about this since day one. Originally, the conversation was bringing back the class that's called, it used to be called, I can't remember. Auto care, or something like that. And then that transitioned to the all-girls part of it. And then ironically, one of my peers at another school, I won't mention any names, but if you Google it, they just launched theirs this year. And they're within probably 15 minutes of us. And it's an all-females automotive program. It's the empowerment factor of CTE that says we need to introduce this to non-traditional students. And moreover, while it's great that Tiffany is thinking about a career in automotive as a technician, I'm looking at my program over the last 5 years at Farmington. Very few probably want to do this for a living. Some of my best students want to be automotive engineers. Currently, the number 3 student in the country is at North Farmington, and he wants to be an electrical engineer. And he wasn't going to take auto his second year until we sat down and talked about the opportunities of the critical thinking skills that you're going to learn in my class that are going to apply when you leave and get your engineering degree, and then go back to the manufacturer and be like, I remember doing that wire harness in Mr. R's class, and let's change this, and let's change how the engineering part of it's done. That's the big reason why we need an all-female class, to give those girls the empowerment that they need, that they can do it and be successful at it, whether they want to do it for a living or whether they want to do engineering.
If I could add, yeah, kind of reiterating what Mr. Reister said, I'm relating this back to myself. There are not as many women in the STEM field in general. Just by getting them to get their hands a little dirty and a little like, okay, like, let me try this out. They don't have to be amazing or stellar at it, but if they just at least give it that first step, that can open up so many doorways, and I've just seen it with myself. Had I taken auto earlier, like Tiffany said, like, who knows where I'd be. I honestly feel like I'd probably be going in that direction more so. So, yeah, just wanted to reiterate that point.
It is so, did you have something else?
Just one last question. I'm just so impressed by you ladies. Do you do motorcycles?
The program? No.
Okay.
No.
Maybe we should start. We should start.
There is a conversation about, so again, with the Skills USA competition, there is a version of that called Power Sports that we would qualify for. I just haven't jumped off that bridge yet. There are plans potentially doing that. But again, unofficially, I've got this building block plan, which, not to tilt my hand, but eventually will lead to bringing back co-op so that my advanced students are going to work. My students, I've got one student right now, he makes over $36,000 a year part-time after school, working in the shop. He sees more in a day than he will in my shop in a week, just because the exposure that they get.
Sure.
So that's where my big times are going. And then, yes, the motorcycle, power sports, electric vehicles, we can add in boats if we want. Anything that has an internal combustion engine is potential, for sure.
It is so impressive that each of you had the courage to take a chance on automotive and to hear each of your stories about what it has led to. For each of you, may that be a model for you for how you live your lives and seeing the possibility in trying new things. I also want to celebrate you and thank you for being willing to try and encourage other women to give it a try as well. Whether it's so that they know how to change their own oil and their own tires, or just for the confidence in themselves that it will build, or a career path potentially. That you have taken the initiative to champion this idea of an all-girls automotive class. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will take a short recess to come over and congratulate each of you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back in session. Next, we have approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda of the regular Board of Education meeting Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, as presented.
Support. Motion to approve the agenda by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Ms. Weems. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. This evening, I have good news for us to celebrate. First, the Rise and Thrive Awards were held last week, and it was so wonderful to have the opportunity to honor and celebrate all the students, middle and high school students, who have succeeded in achieving many of their goals this at this time. It was a beautiful luncheon event, and several board members and members of the administration were present, parents, teachers, and of course the students themselves. It was really exciting to be able to celebrate their accomplishments in that fashion. Thank you to all of those who participated, and congratulations again to the students on their many successes. Also, we have been honored with some Michigan Association of School Board awards. The Michigan Association of School Boards is pleased to acknowledge the accomplishment of our board members for achieving a whole board award for our achievements in 2023, and that is the Standard of Excellence Award. We also have some individual awards. Let's see. Myself and Ms. Fox and Ms. Heinrich have all been awarded Level 3, the Award of Distinction from the Michigan Association of School Boards. And our colleague, Ms. Angie Smith, has been awarded the Level 5 Master Diamond Award from the Michigan Association of School Boards. So thank you to my colleagues for continuing our education in our service to our students and our community. Congratulations. Okay. All right, let's go ahead with our report from the Student Roundtable. Dr. Delgado, would you like to introduce our speaker?
I don't see our Student Roundtable president here, so perhaps we can
Not here today? Okay.
delay that agenda item. I apologize.
All right, no problem. Items from the secretary. Pardon me?
I can read that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Yes, and regarding items from the Secretary, the Board has received communications regarding National PTA, LegCon, and Michigan PTA Advocacy Day, request for FPS priorities. March is Reading Month. Bill Lovaway's handout at the March 5th, 2024 FPS Board meeting. IB at Farmington High School. Kenbrook Playground. A note on Farmington teachers. Board of Education Code of Ethics, and testimonials from former IB students. The board acknowledges communications and responds when appropriate. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, accessible on the Farmington Public Schools website.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Typically, we would have a legislative update at this point, but Mr. Rich is not here, so we'll move on to our district updates. Dr. Delgado.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. Good evening to our Board of Education, to the public. So many things to celebrate, and we look forward to our athletic celebrations at our winter sports recognition coming soon at a future board meeting. We hope to have lots of our young student athletes to celebrate their successes with you, but just a couple to make notice of. So I want to congratulate everyone involved with our North Farmington High School men's basketball team, who were state runner-ups at the Breslin Center. So we had just a wonderful, wonderful, not only season of athletic success, but really equally important was the support of our students in our community who showed their best foot forward and supported the team up at the Breslin and at all of their march through the playoffs with a really respectful student section that was really complimentary of the talent and the character of our boys. So congratulations to them, to Coach Negocian and the entire North Farmington High School basketball team. We also had our Farmington United gymnastics team that was also state runner-ups. And so we're very, very proud of those individuals. We hope to bring them again to the meeting as well to recognize them for the winter sports recognition. Our robotics team is back in action, and if you're here in the audience, you see our very own Henry in his wonderful purple suit from representing the Hackbots. They will be in competition. They were in Jackson last weekend or the weekend before. They'll be at Livonia Churchill High School all day Saturday. I'm looking forward to joining them there for their continued competition of the Hackbots. In addition, we had 38 students in DECA who participated, and a total of 45 medals were awarded, with 16 students earning the right to compete at DECA International competitions at April 25th through May 1st in Anaheim, California. So our students are thriving in so many different areas. You saw automotive, we know athletics, we know musicals, we know robotics, we know business professionals, and so there are many, many different ways that our students are thriving in our district. And our staff are doing so as well. So I'm very pleased to announce that I've received this actually today. We have two staff members, Kathleen Smith and Nancy Walasuk, have been nominated by their peers and selected by the committee to receive the 2024 Oakland County Excellence in Transportation Award for Farmington School District. This award is presented to individuals who exemplify excellence in providing or supporting the safe transportation of pupils in Oakland County. We know our connection to our bus drivers here, long-standing support. They're at our parades, they transport our kids safely, and they love being part of this community, and they love our kids, and so we are really, really excited when they get recognized. So I know several of us will be in attendance at the celebratory dinner in April for Kathleen and Nancy, and we just appreciate their commitment to Farmington and their representation and that well-deserved recognition that they're going to receive as well. So lots more to come. Looking forward to a strong final week of school before we jump into the spring break season. And when we get right back from spring break, it's the mad rush to the end of the school year, including all of our assessments, state assessments, as well as those important AP and IB exams coming in the spring. So lots more to go, but really happy to celebrate our kids and our staff today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Delgado. Next, we have reports from board committees, and first up, we have our Communications and Community Engagement Committee. Yes.
I can report because
That'd be
Mr.
great.
Rich isn't here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, the Communication and Community Engagement Committee met on March 7th. Mr. Rich, Dr. Blau, and myself, along with Dr. Delgado and Diane Baumann. Our first topic was a debrief on the community dialogue that was held on February 13th. And the topic was athletics. We tried a different format this time. Rather than having guiding questions, we had just community members sit at tables, and the topic was athletics. And we had chart paper, and we had to bring out extra chart paper. And it was just a real good conversation. There was a big group from the wrestling parents that were there, and the athletic director was there. The district athletic director is aware of the issues that were brought up, and as a result, they're in the process of implementing different accommodations and things that were asked for. So prioritizing gym practice time for all the sports was a big thing that they talked about. And then they were talking about a mat lift and new wrestling mats. They also talked about safety protocols, and they had students having some asks as far as clarification. And so that was really helpful. And so Human Resources and the athletic department are working, and they're developing protocols regarding coach, student, athletes, interaction, and communication. So to spell that out more specifically to parents and to the athletes and to the coaches. And the district is also coming up with a form for anti-discrimination and appropriate language use and appropriate interaction with students. And that's going to be something that will be rolled out also. The next meeting is on May 14th. And the topic that we landed on was the topic of reimagining high school. That is one of the goals that the superintendent and Dr. Coffin are pursuing this year. We've had conversations with student groups, we've had conversations with administrators, with teachers, and we thought it would be a real good conversation to involve parents and community members in that. And again, it's going to be with the open format, I think, where people will have an opportunity to have conversations, and then we will share out the things that come out of that. So we're looking forward to that. So if you mark your calendar for May 14th, our next community dialogue.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Next, we have our Finance and Facilities Committee report. Ms. Weems?
Yes, thank you. So the Finance and Facilities Committee met on March 12th. Myself and Ms. Heinrich were in attendance. Mrs. Fox, we met with separately to give her an update. We talked about future facilities needs, and we were informed that the facilities are in need of support with respect to parking lots, sidewalks, playgrounds, drainage, roofs, and general upkeep. We know that many things were addressed as part of the bond, and we know that the bond proceeds are dwindling down, so we need to consider these amounts going forward to the extent that they're not going to be able to be absorbed in the facilities budget. That's just generally not how that's done. So we need to consider some funding options. The committee asked for the administration to come up with a summary of what's needed by building, and that this should include any items that were left out of the previous bonds and new items that would have arisen, because the last time a study was done, it was done in 2015, and that was what supported the bonds that we are currently using to support renovations to our buildings. And now, we're coming up on 10 years later. Certainly some new things have been identified. So we asked for that to be presented to us so that we could make some better informed decisions, and then also have some time to engage with the community on thoughts on how to fund future needs. We also talked about the fund balance. As background, when I started with the board in 2015, part of the reason that I started, that I engaged with the board or sought to be appointed was because the district was in a poorer financial condition. In fact, our financial status was really poor. We had about a 6% fund balance, and just for reference, 5% is the point at which the state invites themselves to be a partner with you in the form of an emergency manager. So I joined because I was very concerned about our financial situation and wanted to see improvements. We have improved. I'm very happy with a much more healthy fund balance today. We made some changes to our policy years ago, but in my opinion, we did not go far enough. And so we had a discussion about whether we needed to revisit our fund balance. That is a discussion item for later on today, so I will save that conversation for later today. I wanted to have a separate conversation about it because I'm hoping that we can have an action item later on after discussion if the rest of the board is in agreement about potentially making some further adjustments to the fund balance. Again, as background, we made some adjustments a few years ago, but we did not raise it to the recommended levels at the time because we were so low at the time. It would have been pretty drastic to change the policy to move it from such a low balance all the way up to what was recommended. We decided that we would do small steps several years ago, and then we would revisit. And now is the time, I believe, that we should revisit it. So I did a little bit of research and wanted to share that with the board. And then the final thing we talked about was the budget for the 24-25, which is also a subject of conversation and discussion today, so I will leave that for Ms. Kapinski to work us through. But we talked about parameters and assumptions related to enrollment and foundational allowances. Had a pretty positive report, some good news in the form of student enrollment going up and in funding. From what I saw, just to make a comment before we hear the presentation, I am very pleased based off of what I heard, and also with respect to what I have been able to research on my own as I was trying to make a recommendation to the board on the fund balance around how we've handled special one-time funding. I took a look at the fund balance of several districts in our area, and what was interesting is when I did this research several years ago, the higher performing school districts had higher fund balances, and the lower performing school districts had lower fund balances. And this time around, it's the reverse. The lower performing districts have significantly higher fund balances. I'm talking to the point of like 40, 50, almost 60%. And the reason for that is because it's likely, I don't know their situations, but it is very likely that they're holding on to and having trouble spending some of these one-time dollars. We are not doing that. We are doing a really good job of meeting our students' needs now, and that's reflective in the fund balance that we have. So I wanted to just say thank you to our business office for all of the work that you guys have been doing with all of the funding that's been coming, and being very thoughtful and strategic about addressing needs, at the same time making sure that we don't encounter the same cliff that other school districts and most nonprofit organizations around the country are likely dealing with in having not properly planned for and used one-time funding for one-time things. So that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weems. Next, we have our Policy and Board Governance Committee report from Mr. Walker.
Thank you. So the Policy Board Governance Committee met this past Thursday, March 14th. Myself, members Weems and Fox were in attendance. Additionally, Dr. Delgado, Brad Paddock, our Assistant Superintendent of Talent Development, and Greg Smith, Director of DEI, along with Ms. Buckley, were in attendance. First item on the agenda was just wrapping up the response to the threat assessment from the previous policy report. Ms. Buckley provided the committee with the Miller-Johnson response to the district's request for further clarification on the proposed updates to policy 6002 and 6002 administrative regulations. And per Mr. Sutton, there are no concerns, legal or otherwise, with maintaining our current policy and not approving the updates, which we then left the update or left the policy as is. Then we went into a point of privilege as I presented some research around policy review, especially as it relates to areas of equity, areas of discipline, and some of the items that have been brought up by our community members. It was stated that the purpose of this policy review is to ensure that our policies are reviewed for timeliness, fairness, and legal accuracy, to ensure that the policies guide and protect students, staff, and administration of Farmington Public Schools and provide a safe and supportive educational environment, and to ensure that our community will have the faith and trust that their dollars and most valuable assets, which are their children, will be handled responsibly. I went on to share that and clarify that the guiding principles for this work that we're embarking upon and the views related to this work were a part of the Michigan Code of Educational Ethics, which is found on the district's onboarding in the district's onboarding paperwork. Specifically, principles 2, 3, and 4 of the code were highlighted as our focus areas. We had discussion and clarification around certain aspects of policies 3010, 4004, and 8008, which included Mr. Paddock and Mr. Smith and Dr. Delgado. I went on to provide links to policy manuals for 3 different districts to be utilized for comparison purposes. Part of the research was, if we're going to do this overview of this work, let's see what other people are doing, how they're doing it, and whether or not there's anything we can glean from their processes and bring into ours along the way. Those schools were Detroit Public Schools, Saline Public Schools, and Chicago Public Schools as well. In addition, information that was brought forth from the community from Ms. April Brooks, who again is a community member, related to non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy and complaint procedures was added to the research and discussed at that particular time, along with thoughts from interviews that I did with equity thought leaders. One is Dr. Tracy Durant from Baltimore Public Schools. She is the Senior Executive Director from the Office of Equity, Dr. Bobby Hayes Goodrum, and Naomi Khalil. Lastly, we got into thoughts and suggestions on next steps, and that would be in part, and this is from the meeting, committee members, again, should continue to take time to review the presentation materials there and begin to inform their thoughts on FPS policy or where our gaps may be. There was a considerable amount of information that was in that presentation and links to all of the places where the research, where I got the research from, so that the members had access to that data. Review the student code of conduct and offer recommendations there. The idea, again, is that this is going to be a balanced review. We're going to be looking at staff. We're going to be looking for students, or looking at students, excuse me, to make sure that everywhere we can, we do better, and where we are, we stand strong on. Dr. Delgado did state that FPS is one of the few districts that has a positive culture handbook, and has hired restorative practices persons for secondary buildings, which we thoroughly appreciated. And also, I don't know if it was coincidence or not, but we had a wonderful presentation of that practice at our board retreat that following Saturday. We're going to be looking into developing an equity policy in conjunction with Mr. Smith, or perhaps a culturally responsive education policy. And again, this is going to go back to reviewing policies from other districts in terms of the work that they've done, and how does that work within what we're trying to do here at FPS. And we also need to confirm with our legal service providers as we progress, so that we are not in violation of any labor laws, contractual labor laws along the way. What we create, if we need to create anything, we want to make sure that it does not conflict with union contracts and agreements along the way. Several other items were listed as a part of the meeting, but that particular element took the majority of the time, so some things were tabled for later, but tabling does not mean not going to address. Specifically, that equity policy as mentioned, a review of policies and AR that speak to employee, student, and discipline. Again, that was reflected in the recommended steps. Review of processes for sharing policy updates with the public and public at meetings and in distributed materials, as well as public attendance at future policy committee meetings. Those are on the agenda, but right now these elements take priority, and that the meeting concluded at 4:58 at that time. As I mentioned earlier, since that time, there have been some additional things that have been done to continue to further this work. This work is being taken very seriously by our committee, and I want to thank, at this point, I definitely want to thank Members Weems, Members Fox, Mr. Paddock, Mr. Smith, and Dr. Delgado for taking on additional work on top of their already busy and hectic schedules along the way. But we all feel that this is incredibly important, and we're committed to seeing this process through. So that same Thursday night, an email was sent to the Michigan Association of School Boards to get their CBA 102 policy information. That's usually something that's taken at the beginning of a person becoming a school board member, and so it may have been a while since we've had that information. So that request was put forth, and to also speak with their legal department for additional guidance and steps as we continue to move through this. I'm not trying to do this work in a vacuum. I want as many thought leaders involved in this process as possible and as it makes sense. Because we do understand that there is an aspect of urgency coming from our community about this, the recommendations for priorities were made that as we focus in on the work, we focus in on these areas specifically. Racial, ethnic, gender identity, language, specifically slurs, hate speech, things of that nature, and consequences and processes for dealing with persons who violate those particular policies. Specifically bullying, and again, the same, consequences and processes for those who violate those particular policies. And as I mentioned before, an increased emphasis on the development or establishment of an equity policy. Do we need it? What does it say? How does it link to other policies? And proclamation requests, both proposed and current, and the consequences and processes for those who violate said policy. The email also reiterated the rationale for this level of review. Again, and I, at the point of being redundant, but I want to emphasize that this is about giving thought to our current policies, wording, and presentation, and are they proper for these times? What changes are needed and why? We're not just doing changes for the purposes of making change. This is not a performative action, but this is going to be a deep dive into what we need to do. And if we come back from this dive saying that what we have is right and exact, and there may be some other aspects and angles we need to take on it, then we can stand on that because the work has been done, and certainly out of respect to our community. Again, the review should be reflective of both staff and students, and that it needs to be completed in advance of our next meeting for discussion at that meeting. We also are I'm recommending that we move our May 30th policy meeting up to May 16th, shorten the amount of time in between, and hopefully have some language that has gone through the proper vetting process in order to maybe present as a possible first reading at that time. On Friday, at the thought of how union agreements may or may not impact our policy, an email request was made to Dr. Delgado and Mr. Paddock so that I could get information about our union contracts. I since received information about where to find that, and that is now going into the review process. And then on Monday, I spoke with Brad Banasek, who's legal counsel for the Michigan Association of School Boards, and the points from that conversation were that he was familiar with our policies as they were produced by Miller Johnson, and the policies are written broadly, so it allows flexibility to account for different situations and circumstances. He told me that typically the development of additional policy is handled through a third party, and while it is within the board's ability to do this work, it is unique for a board to do that and for a board member or committee to take on this level of work. So there was a measure of support and point of pride, for lack of a better way, that a reason or wording that we're doing this work. Policy, we spoke about how policies are carried out typically and how that is handled through administrative regulations. So there's policy that's created and then the administrative regulations that implement those particular policies. There was a discussion around the shared process for development of new policies and what that would be. So the committee will develop the language. The language will be vetted by the district's legal team. Once the legal team has vetted it, then we'll bring it to the board for first reading, discussion, questions if any. Then a second reading will be provided before the board takes any action. And that the final point regarding union contracts, and this was very important and enlightening for my purposes, and that is current contracts supersede any board policy. And again, that is why it's important for me to have that information so that as we're doing the work, we're not doing the work in a vacuum and unnecessary work that will not be able to go forward because of our legal ramifications. When the call was concluded, Mr. Banasek emailed me the CBA 102 class policy outline, where there's also a policymaker checklist, and I sent that information out to community members at that time. And so again, that was as of Monday, March 18th. So we are continuing to move forward on this work, and we'll continue to update this board as needed. That's it.
Thank you. Next, we are moving on to discussion items, and first up, we have the 2024-25 budget development timeline and parameters and assumptions.
Indeed we do, and we have our wonderful Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Mrs. Jennifer Kaminsky, to walk us through those parameters and assumptions for next school year.
All right. Good evening, board members and Dr. Delgado. Here to share with you this evening the budget timeline, as well as the parameters and assumptions for 24-25. So looking at the timeline, this evening, I'll be presenting those assumptions and parameters to you. I'll also be asking you later on in an action item to approve the resolution to hold our budget hearing on June 4th. So you'll see that item later on. We will have our 24-25 board, our budget document available for review on May 30th, for review and the hearing on June 4th. We will also bring to you our tax levy at that time. And then on June 18th, prior to July 1, we will ask the board to adopt our 24-25 budget as well as set our tax levies. So just currently looking at our foundation allowance. So this year, we're collecting $11,484 per pupil. We collect $1,876 from homestead. That's what we collect from our residential property taxpayers. $3,252 from our businesses, which is non-homestead, with the remaining coming through state aid at about $63.56. So just to kind of show you where our sources of revenue come from, that foundation allowance that I just talked about makes up 58% of our total revenue. And you can see the breakdown between property taxes as well as what the state funds. We do receive other state and local revenue. That's about 28%. So there are a lot of categoricals such as special education, at-risk funding, adult ed. We receive MIPSR's offset money, MIPSR's retirement, literacy, bilingual, and many other grant funds. And then our local revenue is made up of our preschool tuition, interest revenue, some Medicaid fee-for-service. Oh, and I forgot to remove athletic pay to participate. We do not collect that anymore, so I apologize for the error. Our inter-district revenue makes up 7%, and that is the money that's collected by Oakland County, Oakland schools, through that county-wide millage for special education as well as our vocational millage. Federal revenue makes up 7% in total. So just to highlight our recurring grants, and so these are grants that we've received for quite a while on an annual basis. So Head Start, our IDEA special education funds, Title I, II, III, and IV, as well as adult ed funds. And then, of course, over the last 3 to 4 years, we've been receiving lots of one-time funds, whether it be through the federal government or the state. So again, are those ESSER 3 funds? This is really the final full year for those dollars, so our 6/30/24 fiscal year. We do have 3 months in 24-25 to spend the remaining dollars that we may not have spent by June 30th. And then those 11T equalization funds, those were also considered ESSER funds. They did come through the state. So we're currently looking at where we're at with those dollars, but we're anticipating having spending about $5 million in the current year, with about $1.7 million for 24-25. And again, as things change and as we reallocate those dollars, possibly in the next 3 to 4 months, those numbers will change. And then there are additional grant funds that are available through the state. We have 35J, which is literacy funding. There's also funding for American history and such. So there are lots of grants out there still, and we are applying for any of those that we are entitled to. So on the expenditure side, salaries and benefits are about 82%, and again, that encompasses everything from wages to all of the benefits, retirement, FICA, and then our health and dental and other fringe benefits. Purchased services are about 11%, and I kind of picked out the larger items, so custodial services, our utilities such as water and phone costs, repairs and maintenance, our sub-costs that are paid through EduStaff, conferences and other contracted services, and then our software license fees, whether they're instructional or for support services. Supplies is about 5%, and that includes teaching supplies, textbooks, again, utilities, natural gas and electricity, and then fuel, tires and batteries. Those are the main supplies. And then we have other, which makes up about 2%. Building and site improvements, those of a capital nature, special education tuition payments to other districts for our students who attend center programs, dual enrollment, Grad Alliance, and virtual classes. And then we're going to continue those operating transfers to the capital projects funds. and then some small dues and fees and miscellaneous. So some of the key assumptions included in this budget development. We obviously want to maintain a high-quality instruction program. We have regular discussions with the instruction department. We talk about grants available. We talk about where the needs are going to be for the following year so that we can allocate those resources for instructional initiatives that are taking place. And then obviously we want to continue our supports for student achievement. So again, this initial blush at the 24-25 parameters and assumptions is taking into account the governor's school aid budget, which was released in early February. We've also received some, enrollment projections from a few different companies. We'll consider that inflation impact and where our costs, where we're seeing our costs at the current time, and then maintaining a fund balance that falls within that board policy of 10 to 15%. So on the revenue side, we are seeing that there's a slight increase in enrollment. Both companies reflected that information. And then we also have preliminary information on school of choice. And so similar to last year, based on that information, we are going to build in a slight increase, about 100 students into our forecast. The foundation allowance, the governor did propose a $241 per pupil foundation allowance increase. You'll see up here, I've only included $100. And the reason for that is the governor has created her budget using $670 million of money that's supposed to be going into the retirement system. And so there's some legal ramifications there. We're not sure whether that will actually take place. And so right now, instead of budgeting her full increase, we decided to reduce that to about $100 per pupil until that's resolved. I did find out this past Friday that the House and the Senate will be releasing their budgets sometime after spring break. So hopefully we'll have some more information and we'll see what their priorities are, as well as where they're projecting funding levels to be. We do have some small increases, special education, $250,000 due to our increased costs in the current year. We'll receive some increased money from that county special education millage due to higher property tax amounts. And then we'll continue to collect the indirect costs from nutrition services program. So federal revenue, that will be flat for all grants that we receive annually. So I noted those. Those will come over at the same amount as they're in this year. And just a reminder, we budget revenue to equal expenditures, so there is no impact on the bottom line at this point. And we will show a decrease for those ESSER 3 funds, whatever we are projecting that we'll have spent this year, as well as 11T funds, and take those out of that budget for next year. We'll assume wages and benefits will be at negotiated levels. We are currently have 2 contracts expiring June 30th, and so we'll be working through that information as we move along and prior to setting the budget. We have a replacement savings of about 10 teacher retirements. So typically when teachers retire, they're exiting at the highest amount, and we're bringing lower paid staff in. MIPSR's retirement rate will be flat this year, which is a good thing. Last year it increased about 3 percentage points. And so no increase is budgeted at this time. Fringe benefits will show a 5% increase. Again, that's our health, dental, and vision. Utility costs, 3%. And as I mentioned, we'll continue those transfers to the Technology Other Projects Fund for So again, some of the current unknowns, what will the funding be for 24, 25? There's a lot of discussion that this budget will not be complete prior to July 1. And so we'll most likely be setting our budget without having concrete information, which has been the case for many years. But the House and the Senate will release their budgets, again, sometime after spring break. We'll take that into account with the governor's budget, and they'll kind of work through their process to come to agreement on the budget at some point. But again, we won't know when that'll be approved. Enrollment, again, we can look at projections, we can look at the data that we have currently, but until fall hits, we don't know what our actual enrollment is. Same with staffing, enrollment plays a part in that. So. And then our federal and state economies, we continue to watch that and the impacts that it has on our costs. And I can take any questions at this time.
I think you've given such a thorough report that you've answered all of our questions.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have some information on the fund balance.
Oh, yes. Okay, so as mentioned, we spoke about the fund balance at the latest Finance and Facilities meeting. Background started out really low. Our fund balance policy at the time was a range of 8 to 10%. In my opinion, 8% is way too low and too close to the 5%. Had a discussion several years ago, raised that to 10 to 12%. No, I'm sorry, 10 to 15% is our current policy. And that was not the recommended fund balance amount. The recommended fund balance amount from the Michigan school business officials is between 15 and 20%, and it is from the Government Finance Officers Association, 16 to 17%. And our auditors from Plant Moran regularly share this with us too, but I did some separate research and also validated that. We did not increase the fund balance targets to that amount several years ago because we were at 6%, and to raise it to 15 to 20% would have been pretty significant. So we said we would do 10 to 15 to start, and we'll take a look at it later, and this is later. So I'm recommending that we take a look at it again. Our Finance Committee did that. A few things that you want to take into consideration in determining what a fund balance ought to be. There's no one-size-fits-all. Yes, there are recommendations out there, but it's a unique decision. One of the things that you should consider is, at what point does the school need to borrow? There's no reason for us to be incurring interest. We've decided that we're going to collect taxes at a certain time of the year. We've agreed this every year. As a result, we may not get funding in throughout the year, right? So we have to be conscious of that and make sure that when school starts, we have funding. If we don't, then most school districts will borrow. I think it behooves us to be in a healthy position, not to have to do that. The point at which the school district needs to borrow is at 11 to 12%. So that's one data point. Another data point is how much of the fund balance is restricted as to other use. So yes, it appears as if you have what's called a fund balance, which is essentially a savings, but some of that is restricted and can't be used on other things. So if our fund balance in general is about 20%, I believe it's several percentages of that, about 5, is restricted as to other use. So it's not as if you can use that to fund rainy day stuff or emergency situations. So another data point. Another data point was around the number of months of operating expenses that you have. And usually, I'm an accountant, a CPA, and so a couple of months of operating expenses is normal to have as savings. Let's say something unfortunate happens, you want to be able to pay your mortgage and your car note and all that kind of stuff for at least 2 months. Personally, I want 6, but I don't think that's appropriate for a school district. But 2 months is considered appropriate for a school district. Right now, 10 to 12% buys us 1 month. That leaves me feeling exposed, but I'm conservative, and I definitely recognize that. The other things that we considered were what's going on with other school districts. Oh, let me start off for another second. Another thing to consider is what else is happening with our funds. So yes, we may have a fund balance of X today, but we also have a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 year contract with our staff. And in each of those years, there are steps, there may be salary increases. So we might have a fund balance of X today, but we're planning to be at Y at a certain point in the future. So we have to, give some thought to that as well. And what other needs might we have, either now in the present or in the future? Absolutely. So those are the things that we were thinking about. We also gave some thought to, all right, well, whatever our fund balance is, what happens if our fund balance is over our target? What happens if it's under our target? And so when you start thinking about what is over our target right now, we're thinking, oh, well, our fund balance target is 10 to 15%. We're well over that. We should spend it down, is the usual thinking, but we haven't directed the administration to do that for a number of reasons. One, because personally, I believe that our fund balance should be higher. And 2, we are doing that longer range thinking where we're looking at our budget, not just this year, but in future years, and we know that our fund balance is going to decline because of our future steps and increases. So all of that said, also did some work to look at some other school districts, as I mentioned, surrounding school districts. I looked at what the web would say are the higher performing districts in our area and the lower performing districts in our area. I'd say we're not far off. We're looking at 24% fund balance, 14, 16, 14 amongst the top, and 29.9, 61, and 59% at the bottom. Other school districts in our area are about 16. The recommendation that we came up with was to move from 10 to 15% to, I want to make sure I get this right, 12 to 16%. So moving up 2 points on the low end and moving up 1 point on the high end.
So just a little bit of a shift, so we're just a little bit further away from that 5 that's at the bottom.
Correct. And closer to what would be considered best practice according to our state and the government. Yeah.
Does that shift take into consideration that 2-month surplus that you were mentioning before? So instead of being 1 month solvent, will be 2 at that point?
It doesn't get us to 2. It gets us to about 1.5. But it does keep us out of borrowing. And so that was the rationale for the floor. And again, we do want to have some flexibility. We don't want to, constrain the district. And so what that would mean is as our fund balance changes over time, that doesn't mean that we can't approve a budget that has a fund balance over 16. That's not what that means. It means we're considering our fund balance as we're approving the budget. And we're also thinking about those things, in future years. When we take a look at the budget, we're also looking at, okay, well, what are steps and increases and natural things that will be happening that will impact our fund balance in the future.
So what you're saying is that you're making it comfortable, because we all know this is an election year, we have another one in 2026. So you're making it comfortable so that when new people are put in, they won't be put in a situation where they won't be. I got you. Thank you.
That's a very good point, yes. And, I think we have an opportunity here to leave our district and future boards in a good position.
Right.
With moving our fund balance to something that is healthy, that is well thought out, and that makes sense. And again, it doesn't mean that if we are out of that range, that we're not within our policy, because the policy is specifically written to provide for a target. Not necessarily a set in stone, it has to be this way, but as we are giving some thought to expenses and budgets and that sort of thing, we are generally thinking about keeping that sort of fund balance.
By shifting those points, does that take away significantly from any of the items that we've allocated monies for in the immediate couple of years?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is no, because one, our fund balance exceeds that right now, and because the last time I looked at the budget and forecasts for the next few years, that fund balance was going down. And into the foreseeable future, I'd say like 2-3 years out, we're still going to be in that range.
And would that I'm sorry, I don't want to, would that also be why, instead of making a much larger leap in that movement, you were recommending this, was it 2 from the bottom and 1 from the top, or 1 at the top?
So that's a good question, too. Yeah, the conservative person in me would like to see it even higher, but then you get into legitimately, like, you don't want it too high, because we want to do more for our students, right? We want to invest in curriculum, we want to invest in innovation, we want to encourage that, so you wouldn't have a significantly larger fund balance than is recommended, because you should theoretically be using those funds to support, education. And I think that is what the district has been doing in the past few years, and why we don't see such a significant fund balance as I was noticing in some of the districts in our area.
So what you're doing is keeping us kind of financially healthy opposed to unhealthy, and we have to lift up mattresses and rugs to try to find monies. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, to the extent that the bond funds are declining, right, we're in the last issuance, and I think we've only got a few $1 million left of that bond to spend.
Right.
Generally speaking, this would be the kind of thing that you could leverage for some facilities emergencies. It is helpful to have a fund balance for that reason as well. And historically, school districts don't really have the capacity to do that with funding. And, inflationary budgets, if you will, like we may have a higher budget than last year, but it buys us less because of inflation. Because of that phenomenon, school districts generally don't save for stuff like facilities and parking lots and roofs and all that kind of stuff. And nor would we. We don't have the budget to be able to do that. We're going to have to consider something different, which is to the earlier point. We'll have to have that discussion. But if something were to happen, you do want some funding available to be able to take care of those kinds of things. And so, yes, it puts us in a healthier
Right.
position to be able to do that.
Right, so we would not be financially unhealthy.
Correct.
We'll be stable.
So the recommendation is 12 to 16%. Our committee felt comfortable with that. I wanted to leave room for us to have a conversation at the board table and answer any questions. If there are none, and if we feel comfortable doing that through the chair, we would ask that this be an action item on a future agenda.
So like at our next meeting,
Correct.
to give our other board colleagues an opportunity.
Correct.
Yeah, and I want to thank Mrs. Weems, because she really did a good job of providing research and good explanation.
Yeah.
And and you pointed out, our buildings are aging, and we have a lot of bond work, and we're doing a lot of things, but sometimes pipes break, roofs leak, unexpected expenses. And our biggest expense in our budget is people. And when we were looking at the last contracts, one of the things that, was pointed out is the life of the contracts, how the fund balance goes down with all the increases and things. And so we're coming up into new negotiating cycles. And so we want to have enough money in our fund balance so that we can, take care of our future needs and expenses of our employees also. So that's really important. So thank you for that thorough explanation.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Next, we move to public comment. Just a reminder that while our board meetings are held in public, they are not public meetings. We will not be responding, thank you, to public comment, but we are happy to set up a time to meet with anyone at some later date to further discuss and explore whatever ideas or concerns you might have. Okay. Mr. Bill Lovaway.
Good evening. I would like, let me do this first. Hey, it'd be nice if we could talk about an education budget, a plan, which is exactly what I've been talking about for a while. And in fact, I proposed several changes to make in our plan and things that we ought to consider. One of the things I did was draft a motion to implement what I had written up before. And in my request, one of the things we have is, in our budget, we have a 10 to 15% fund balance requirement. We have $34 million in our fund budget, in our fund balance, and that is $8.6 million over our 10 to 15%. And it seems to me that we're being financially prudent and educationally deficient. We're not educating our kids. What I propose is let's spend that money on kids because it's their future, and we ought to be comfortable to be able to manage our funds and not increase our fund balance. As a matter of fact, we ought to take it down right now to 15%, $8 million. And oh, by the way, you got at least $1 million of, I'll call it slush, coming in from the state in that 35J amount. And when we talk about the money we spend, I know it looks like you're setting us up for another bond issue. You don't have any problem spending $4 million for an administration building? Well, when I look at the budget, I'm going to look at your administration budget and wonder why the heck we have that many administrators. Another $400,000 to convert Shiawassee, and I heard somebody say that we're going to do something with electronic scoreboards instead of educating kids. Let's find a home for administrators. Let's put in electronic scoreboards, and let's not educate our kids. And the fact that we have a reading proficiency of 27% in one of our school buildings, Wood Creek, and we're talking about this like it doesn't make a difference. This money can make a difference in somebody's lives, not in our balance, and we can manage our funds responsibly in the future. So that's the motion I got out there. And oh, by the way, when we are spending money, it comes out of my pocket. Stop robbing me. How are our tax rates compared to other school districts?
Thank you. Next, Mr. Henry Francis. got the memo.
Good evening, board members. As many of you know, I am part of the Farmington Robotics Team 3414 Hackbots, and I am actually the captain of that robotics team. For those who don't know, we are a well-established team that has been around since 2010, and we are composed of 27% girls and 55% minority. And in addition to that, 96% of our graduating members end up going, as we say, pro into STEM-related careers, which is well above the national average. It is actually 11% above the national average.
Wow.
We currently compete in the Michigan district, which of all districts across the world is the largest, containing over 500 teams, which makes up 17% of all worldwide FRC teams. And being in such a competitive district, we have two main issues that have been affecting us now, and it is becoming more and more difficult to keep up with surrounding teams. The first of those issues is our facility space. We currently practice out of the Farmington High School metal and wood shop, where we are able to properly manufacture our robot, and we love the shop. We have a great time in there. It is very useful to us, but the main issue with that wood shop is the fact that we don't actually have anywhere to test our robot. So we are constrained with that, and we oftentimes have to go long distances, half an hour, hour and a half, just to do a simple test of our concepts. And with that, there are also a lot of schools around us that have actually implemented their own STEM facilities for their teams, among those being Livonia. Churchill just built out a brand new STEM facility via a city bond to accommodate for their robotics team, as well as Catholic Central, who built out a multi-million-dollar STEM facility for their robotics team, as well as for some other small programs. And with funding, we also have the difficulty of our coaching. We have one coach who has to support over 65 members, and oftentimes we view that as arguably unfair to that coach. So one of our main objectives in the future is to get more funding, as well as implement that STEM center that I mentioned, so that way we can continue the sustainability and longevity of our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Next, we have, not sure, Staraj is the last name? Is it Garana?
Yeah, Giovanna's tonight.
Ah, okay.
Good evening, board members. My name is Giovanna Stenheim. My journey with Farmington Public Schools started over 7 years ago when my firstborn turned 3 years old. Displaying some non-neurotypical behavior, Farmington Early Childhood Special Education provided a thorough evaluation. Meeting criteria for autism felt like the end. I decided to entrust your department, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. My child's trajectory changed, now mainstreamed and thriving, a poster child of what early intervention can do. When the time came to attend kindergarten, I did not take that decision lightly. In fact, I toured several of your elementaries, local private schools too. It was not until I encountered STEAM Academy's warm front office staff, fresh, innovative atmosphere, did I know that I want my children to come here. Dr. Sanders proudly showed me the makerspace, think tank, garden, and shared her vision for STEAM. We have been at STEAM now for 5 years, and if there's one thing I know, the educators there have heart. It's Principal David Beasley high-fiving and greeting my children and all children every morning, early mornings, all year. It's iCenter's Nathan Ali, positively acknowledging so many students by name. in every grade. It's the teachers. I encourage you to visit. Volunteer at the 8th grade mock interviews like I have. Learn about the activities the 8th graders participate in. Hear how lit up they are about their genius projects. Ask them which teachers have impacted them at STEAM. Come see what so many parents know. STEAM Academy student population is diverse. It's real world. There is equality and opportunity at STEAM, whether it's participating in Black History Month, involvement in the Equity Club, sponsorship in Multicultural Night, the sharing of individual class portfolios of family traditions, or pray space. My youngest noticed there isn't a flag representing our country of heritage in the cafeteria. Upon asking STEAM, can we donate one? Without hesitation, of course, we'll gladly put it up. We put up another flag up for a family last week. There were over 700 lottery applicants submitted to attend STEAM Academy for 2024-2025 school year. The vast majority are from word of mouth referrals. Ask yourself why. There's no educational utopia. For every one-off negative response or comment you have heard here at this podium in the past, rest assured there are many more positive. Do not lose sight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David Villar?
Hello. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to, say I appreciate the effort that you guys have to make sure that things are more clear and that, you're much more transparent than I think you're giving credit for as far as providing information on how our services are being provided. I'm still going to keep pushing for an update on the parent surveys, which I was told are in process, and for increasing the allocation of funds for improving nutrition services for the children. From what I understand from the budget is that for the food itself and for the supplies for the food itself is about $2,500,000. From the amount of revenue and the possibilities that you guys have to obtain more revenue, if we were to double that, that would provide high quality food for kids during lunch, and I think that that would improve student engagement, which leads to my third thing, which is student engagement, especially in parts of Farmington where student engagement is low. We just had a student come up here and speak about the value of the robotics courses and the services that they would need to improve the quality of that. And that is a priority. That's a specific, actionable request that deserves a priority. I think that when we speak of underserved areas of Farmington, where the quality is, I guess, a concern for whatever reason, I think we're underestimating how much the food quality overall can elevate all the students in Farmington, and especially for those that are struggling. And then for the other thing, for the student engagement, just in general, the parent engagement from the surveys may give us more insight so that struggling areas will greatly improve. But we won't find out until we get the parent surveys. So just, that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomas Hull.
Good evening, everyone. Want to let you know that this Saturday, March 23rd, is going to be tutoring, and also we're going to be having a reading celebration, literacy celebration, in which that we're in partnership with the AKA sorority, also with the Farmington Community Library, which will be there, and also with the Farmington Public Schools also will participate, in which that we will promote reading for all children, and it's from we say 10:30 to 12, but we're having our tutoring, so normally people would get there early at 9 a.m. To go to about 12 o'clock. There's going to be games there. It's going to be guest readers that's going to help read to the kids. It's going to be pretty cool stuff that I want to make sure everybody attend, although, you know, the following week is going to be a spring break. We just want to make sure that people don't think that we're not having an event with that. So please be there. If you attend, there's going to be, you know, free snacks that's going to be provided. So it's a good little break for our kids so they won't have that. And then they're going to be giving away books and stuff. So although everyone's going to be off from school, you can still get a couple books and read over the break there. And that would be it on that part. And the second part I just want to throw out a suggestion for the climate that's in our district that we're having. What I'm noticing is that if we start to, I think people in positions of like principals of schools and certain administration or whatnot, I think a lot of it is with this culture because every school has their own captain, I should say, of their own ship. And I believe that every ship is different or every school is different, had their own beat and their own culture. And I think what's happening is a lot of things are letting slide by, rules are not really being enforced. Cultures are just being things, you know, just a whole people. So what I suggest is that if we start doing a regular rotation so people won't get so comfortable with their, you know, buddies that they know for 20 years and you let such slide but not this other person. And I think that will kind of eliminate a lot of the things and the problems that we are having in the school district. So everybody can be, you know, won't get too comfortable doing what they're doing. And that could be, I believe overall that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Any further public comment? Last call for public comment. Seeing no further public comment is now closed. Thank you all. Moving on to action items. First up, world language French adoptions proposals.
And Dr. Coffin, are you going to talk to us about French, or are we just, this is an action item that we're...
It's an action item, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
I've got the motion.
Okay.
We had a discussion item at the March 5th meeting, and we had it presented in detail. So I move that the Board of Education approve the world language French adoptions proposal as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Heinrich to accept the world language French adoption proposal, seconded by Mr. Walker. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Wonderful. Next up, we have the technology purchase for staff devices. Yes, Ms. Weems.
I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of staff computers and accessories in the amount of $255,640.32 from Sehi Computer Products utilizing REMC contract pricing, funds to come from the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund.
Support.
Motion made by Ms. Weems for the technology purchase of staff devices, seconded by Mr. Walker. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead to a roll call vote.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Blau?
Yes?
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
And I myself, yes.
Wonderful.
Motion passed.
The next item is approval of a resolution to hold the public budget hearing. The public budget hearing is, go ahead. Sure. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution to hold the public hearing on the fiscal year 2025 budget and waive the reading of the resolution.
Support.
Motion to approve the resolution to hold the public budget hearing made by Ms. Weems and seconded by Mr. Walker. Is there any discussion? My understanding is this is one of those have-to things, right, that we
Roll call.
are required to do. No, I know that part, but just in terms of holding this public hearing. Yep. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Heinrich with the roll call vote.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. And finally, we have a resolution for consideration of board action regarding an administrative contract. Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
Were you going to say something?
do it during
Oh.
discussion.
Motion first?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution for consideration of board action regarding administrative contract and waive the reading of the resolution.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Heinrich regarding the resolution for consideration of board action regarding administrative contracts, seconded by Mr. Walker. Any discussion?
Just a point of clarification, Dr. Blau. So this pertains to the statutory requirement of notifying an administrative employee of intent to non-renew a contract. This was the topic of our closed session.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no discussion, let's go ahead with a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes.
All right, motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to items from the treasurer. Yes, Ms. Weems.
I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditure printout dated March 19, 2024, as follows: from the general fund, $23,600,354; from the athletics, $220,089; from the 2020 bond fund, $2,301,430; from the 2023 bond fund, $1,694,617; from the nutrition services fund, $847,060; from the benefit stabilization fund, $2,891,635, for a total of $31,555,185.
Support?
Motion to approve the expenditures put forward by Ms. Weems, supported by Ms. Heinrich. Any discussion? All right, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Moving on to our consent agenda. Yes, Mr. Walker.
I move that the Board of Education approve the March 19, 2024 consent agenda as follows. The approval of minutes for March 5th, 2024 study session, March 5th, 2024 regular meeting, March 7th, 2024 Communications and Community Engagement Committee, March 12th, 2024 Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, March 14th, 2024 Policy Board Governance Committee meeting, March 16th, 2024 Board Retreat. Also, Head Start Director's Monthly Report and personnel items.
Support?
Motion to approve the consent agenda by Mr. Walker, supported by Mr. Heinrich. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
Information. You called him Mr. Heinrich.
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh,
That's all
did
right.
I?
I did not take offense.
I apologize.
And she got the last
Thank you.
name right, pronounced
Sorry.
correct.
Ms. Heinrich.
I mean, you don't want it in your minutes to say Mr.
No,
Heinrich.
no.
It's Board now, do you?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith. I apologize, Ms. Heinrich. Okay, so.
5 yes, 0 no.
Yes, 0 no's. Okay, good. Any reports from board representatives this evening?
I do.
Yes.
I have 2 reports. One was the student roundtable met on March 12th. The students actually had a shadowing opportunity before the student roundtable meeting, and so they shadowed various. I went around and was asking who they were shadowing. Some of them shadowed the superintendent, some of them shadowed principals, some of them shadowed teachers, and it was real interesting having that opportunity to see the jobs that people are doing in the district, and just their observations of looking at a teacher's job through the eyes of a teacher rather than a student, principals' jobs as far as, I think one of the students got to go in on a classroom observation. So it was a real good experience for them. They had they always go and talk about points of pride, which is really a nice thing. But then I'm going to murder the name, but Dr. Delgado invited Dr. Subramanian,
Yep, that's correct.
okay, to come in, who is a parent in the district, and he also teaches a course at Michigan State University, talked about concepts to commercialization, and he was very engaging for the students, and they just had tons of questions, and he shared resources and ideas and things that these kids could do, and so it was a wonderful presentation. And just ideas of connecting with him because they're having their job fair, which is on May the 5th.
3rd, Friday, May 3rd.
Friday,
from
May
1:30 to 4:30 at North Farmington High School.
And they had time to meet with their committees, and they reported out what the committees were doing, and they had time to meet with their committees, and they really have to step up their game as far as locking in the parents that are going to be presenting. They're going to have on-site job interviews. They're going to connect with the Hawk the Hawk offered to do on-site job interviews for summer jobs, which is really good. Yeah, it was a good meeting. So I always enjoy watching the kids and talking to the kids and seeing how, their leadership skills. So it was great. And the other report, I had the opportunity to visit meet with the Oakland County School Board Association. Meeting was Wednesday, March the 6th, and there were 24 districts present. We met out at the Pontiac Oakland County Schools Career Center facility, and we had a tour of that, which was really fit in with our students talking about the automotive tech. But I brought back for all of our board members booklet talking about all the course offerings. And our students actually go to the Career Center out in Walled Lake, in Wixom. But there's all sorts of class opportunities. There's some courses that are only offered at certain campuses, but overall there's a lot of things that are being offered. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and they're actually at the Pontiac campus, they have the building trades, and they build a house every year. And I was so impressed because the students start out with they start out with nothing, and they do the foundation. They're built on these big I-beams that a big truck will come and move the house. But they do the foundation, they rough it in, they do all the electrical and the heating, and they do the roofing and the finish and put windows in. So it's just a wonderful experience. And so the careers program, it really runs. They take a block. Their classes meet 2.5 hours, either in the morning or the afternoon. And then they have transportation back to their home school, and they take classes in their home school for the rest of the day. So it's just, we're offering, something to meet the needs of all of our students. I'm looking at the profile of a lifelong learner. So I would encourage parents really to, talk to your students and explore these opportunities that are available. And so, yeah, it was, as always, it's a good meeting. We had a legislative update again, and Dr. Wanda Cook-Robinson actually talked about the new literacy initiative, LEO, Literally Essentials Oakland, or LEO 2.1. And Dr. Blau was texting to Dr. Delgado, are we doing this? And I had the opportunity, as a matter of fact, to go over to Wood Creek for a proof of concept work that they're doing, and the literacy coach was there, and I said, hey, what about this thing? And she said, oh, we've been doing that for 5 years, and actually we're like kind of aged out of it because we're way ahead of the program. So that was really exciting to hear the work that we were doing with this. So it was a good meeting, as always. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Any other board representative reports? Okay.
Seeing none, thank you all. This meeting is adjourned.